Hello guys, let's start with today's class. Welcome to today's class, which is a class for May 28th, May 29th, and May 30th. So let's get started. Let's go over today's activities. The first thing that we're going to do is to check homework with teacher Rafa. Remember, it's workbook pages 104 and 105. So make sure before you start watching it, you already have it complete. Now, the next activity is we're going to do some FCE practice, which will be reading part 2 for practice test 5 with teacher Laurita. Okay, you guys have been working on this with her. And then today we're going to watch a TED Talk that is called Retouching Lives Through Photos. It's really interesting. We're going to talk about tsunamis, about earthquakes, about some disasters, and some photos. And finally, we're going to assign homework, which will be workbook page 106, okay? So guys, let's get started now with teacher Rafa.
Hello people, I'm here again to help you check your homework. It's always a pleasure, so let's start. So, for number 1, it says grammar, participle clauses. Number 1, choose the correct option to complete the sentences. For number 1 would be countries affecting or affected by disasters often need international aid. This one would be affected. 2. Students wanting to help raise money for the appeal should meet in the library at 2 p.m. 3. I find it hard to watch news of disasters, including images of children. Donations made by the public will be sent to the victims of the earthquake. 5. Many countries give development aid to countries damaged by war. 6. The headquarters of the UN, based in New York, was set up in 1945. 7. There has been an increase in companies investing in green technologies. 8. There has been a series of natural disasters leading to a food shortage. For exercise 2, guys, it will be rewrite the sentences from activity 1 using a full relative clause. For example, for number 1 would be countries that or which, both of them are correct. You can put both if you want, but which is just with one is enough. So it would be countries that or which have been affected by disasters often need international aid. 2. Students who want to help raise money for the appeal should meet in the library at 2 p.m. 3. I find it hard to watch news of disasters that include images of children. 4. Donations that have been made by the public will be sent to the victims of the earthquake. 5. Many countries give development aid to countries that have been damaged by war. 6. The headquarters of the UN, which is based in New York, was set up in 1945. 7. There has been an increase in companies which or that. Here it's the same thing, that it can be which or that, or you can put both of them, but with one is more than enough. So, which or that are investing in green technologies. And for the last one, it says, there has been a series of natural disasters that has led to a food shortage. For the following exercise, number 3, it says, read the article and then change the relative clauses in bold into reduced relative clauses. So, for example, number 1, it says, which was enlarged. In this case, it would be only enlarged. For the second one, which was traveling only. This is pretty easy, guys, because you only have to take away anything that it's not the clause. For example, in number 3 would be including instead of included. 4. It says that were filled it would be filled only. 5. That were used will be used again. 6. That were made will be only made. Number 4. Read the sentences below and decide if they are correct or incorrect. Correct sentences that are wrong. For number 1, attending the UNICEF conference, the other students asked me all about it. For this one would be having attends the. So we have to change the attending by attends, and we have to add having. Number 2, wanting to remain neutral, the UN works with many countries and charities. Wanting to remain neutral, it will be wanting, nor wanted. 3. Providing role models to children globally, the Youth Assembly is an important project. This one is correct, guys. 4. Having feeling the disaster zone, many people find themselves homeless. Having failed, not feeling. 5. Watching the terrible news reports, people began sending donations. This one is correct, guys, or also it can be changed by, you can change watching to having watched. Number 6. Making money, the rich have a responsibility to give assistance when appeals are launched. Having made money will be. For number 7, facing with an earthquake, I would leave my home. Face it with an earthquake would be. And for the last one it says, working in a disaster zone, the rescuers were in danger. This one is correct, guys. For the number 5, it says, rewrite the second sentence so that is the same meaning as the first using the word in capital letters. The answer will be between 2 and 5 words. Example, it says, he attended the conference, then returned to his university. So we will have to change it. Having attended the conference, he returned to his university. And we have having. So we're also adding this one in at the beginning. So, for number 2, it says, if I was forced to flee my home, I will take my diary with me. So, the answer, it says, I will take my diary with me, and the verb is forced. So, forced to flee my home would be. For number 2, they were totally exhausted, so they had to abandon the search for survivors. It says exhausted or being exhausted. 3. Because she was in an unfamiliar place, she left nervous. So we have she felt nervous and the verb being. It will be being in an unfamiliar place. 4. He realized he had forgotten his conference notes after he left the room. So we got he realized that he had forgotten his conference notes, and the verb is left. So would be having left the room. 5. He took notes while he listened to the other delegates. He took notes, and we have listening. So would be listening to the other delegates. Because he lacked money, he decided to get a part-time job. So we had he decided to get a part-time job, and we got lacking as a verb. The answer would be lacking money only. So for the next exercise, it says, read about a group of school friends who decided to become involved in charity. Complete the text with these phrases, capitalize words as necessary. For number 1, it says, having met in their first year at school, a group of students decided to do something to restore their local community center. The center, which had been recently destroyed by fire, was the home of many local groups. It was especially important to the other members of the community who used it as a place to meet. Having decided to try to raise money to rebuild the center, they began by holding a sponsored silence. Raising half of the required funds, the event was a success. However, they then decided to become more serious. After appointing a committee, they tried to involve local business, asking them to make donations. This proved successful and they soon reached their target, but having done so, they decided to continue their work. So far, the group has raised money for many projects based in the local area and abroad, and it is a reminder to us all that we can all make a difference. So for the last exercise, guys, it says complete these sentences with the correct form of the word in parentheses. So for the first one, we have cause in parentheses, and it says international response to disasters blank by extreme weather is fast. So the answer would be caused. 2. Traveling to the disaster zone, he met other aid workers. 3. Having headquarters all over the world, it is a global company. 4. The Red Cross, set up in 1881, provides emergency assistance to people in need. And last one, guys, it says, having joined the NGO, she was sent abroad where she helped to rebuild infrastructure projects. So guys, this will be everything for this class. I know we're missing exercise number 8, but on that one the answers vary a lot. So that's the answers in exercise number 8. It's up to you. We trust in you and you only have to be grammatically correct, okay? So this is everything for the class, guys. I hope you're okay. So goodbye, boys. See you soon.
Okay guys, now we're going to be working on practice test number 5 reading part 2 on the vocabulary answers. So get ready. Match the nouns with the pictures. We have 8 different nouns and you have all the pictures on the right. So let's be careful with this activity. For geothermal heat, we have that it is the heat inside the earth, which corresponds to this picture. You can see that the house is obtaining energy from the rock that is surrounding the nucleus or the center of the earth. Okay, then we have interest, which is money charged by banks to people who have borrowed from them. So this would be picture number 2. Then we have loan, which is a sum of money which is borrowed and has to be paid back. Okay, usually at a time space or time frame. Then we have livelihood. So livelihood is defined as a way in which somebody earns money or in which somebody earns a living or survives. So in this case, it would be the family who are selling fruits on this picture. Then we have number 5, core, which is a synonym for center or nucleus. In this case, the nucleus of the earth. Then we have a solar panel, number 6, which obviously is this picture, and it is defined as a device to capture the sun's energy. Next one, we have steam, which is hot gas produced when water boils. So it's basically water in its gaseous phase, right? In its gas phase. All right. And the next one we have is number 8, which is blade. So a blade is defined as the part of a wind turbine that catches the wind. So it's, for example, each of these windmills has 3 blades. Okay guys, so just quickly going over what we just saw right now in case you had any questions. So we have geothermal heat, heat inside the earth. Interest, money charged by banks to people who have borrowed from them. Loan is the sum of money which is borrowed and has to be paid back. Livelihood is the way somebody earns money. Core is the center or nucleus. Solar panel is a device to capture the sun's energy. Steam is hot gas produced when water boils. And blade is a part of a wind turbine that catches the wind. Okay, match the adjectives with their definitions. So we have a list of 7 different adjectives that are part of the reading and our definitions. So let's look at number 1. Controversial, we said that it was something that is causing a disagreement or a discussion. Unsightly is something that is ugly or not pleasant to look at. Towering is something that is very tall. Okay? Initial is first. Non-renewable is not able to be used again, not reusable. Okay, number 6, viable is something that is practically possible, that you can undergo, you can do, you can perform. And number 7, cost effective is something that provides good value for the money or in this case, it could be the effort that you put into it. Okay guys, so for those, with those definitions, let's fill in the blanks with one of these adjectives that we have here. So we said that the correct answer for number 1 was non-renewable. So non-renewable energy sources such as natural gas and oil are not the future. Wind and solar energy are the future. Okay, when you're starting a business, the proposal must include a detailed, cost-effective plan to make sure you will gain money instead of losing it. Number 3, the project was deemed viable because it was time efficient and easy to execute, or doable. Okay, is a synonym. Number 4, the cracks on the wall of the living room are unsightly. Remember, that means ugly, they're not nice to look at. Number 5, from my house you can see the towering mountain peaks of Sierra Madre del Sur. Okay, number 6, the origin of coronavirus is controversial. Some say it mutated naturally and others say that it was created in a lab. And lastly, number 7, my initial thought was that she had forgotten my birthday, but then she surprised me with a gift. Right. Now, in this activity, guys, you had to tell me 3 things that you think are A, controversial, B, cost-effective, and C, towering. So we said we used the first example for controversial, which was genetical engineering. You could have also said a series of other things, but here are 2 more examples. We have euthanasia, which is assisted suicide. So this is practiced in some countries and it is also quite controversial, or some people have an opinion and different to what other people think about it. Okay, it's legal in Switzerland. And we also have number 3, which is the death penalty. Okay, so this is one of the options that we have in some legal systems when a person commits a certain severe or serious crime. We don't have it in Mexico currently, but it is also something controversial. Okay, moving on. Cost effective, we used the first example, which was business. We said a cost effective business. Another thing that can be cost effective is a beauty treatment. For example, something that leaves you looking very beautiful, or maybe is very good for your skin, for your health, and it didn't cost you that much for the effects that you had. And for number 3, we have a construction project, which can also be, you can have a good result and it shouldn't be costing you too much effort or money. Okay, now we have towering. We gave an example last class, which is Notre Dame Church. Another example would be, here's a picture of the Notre Dame Church. Another example is the Popocatépetl volcano. Here's a picture of a recent emission that they had. And number 3 is the Burj Khalifa, which is the tallest building that exists currently. Okay guys, so now we have to match the verbs with their pictures. So we said that for number 1, for tackle, the correct picture was the 2 rugby players, one which was tackling the other. Okay, for number 2, this could be a tricky one. It's pump. And we usually associate pump with pumping water, for example, which is obtaining a liquid to generate pressure and obtain something. But in this case, it's referring to money, pumping money. We will see what it is in the next slide. Then we have drill. So in this case, here we have a picture. Okay, of somebody making a hole in the wall. Then we have generate, number 4. In this case, it's electricity. Number 5, we have ruin, which is there's a wedding cake that has been ruined. Maybe by accident, maybe on purpose. Who knows? It's still ruined. And for number 6, it's deplete. In this case, there's a depletion of forests or of a non-renewable resource. And we have number 7, harness. And in this case, it is harnessing renewable electricity. Okay guys, in this part of the activity, we had to fill in the blanks in the crossword puzzle with the verbs from the vocabulary according to their definition. We have 3 words that are across and we have 4 that are down. So let's go in order. For number 2, across, we have make less and reduce. And the verb is deplete. For number 4, we have try to deal with, also across, and the verb is tackle. For number 5, we have create, and it's a synonym for generate. Then we have the verbs that are downward, written downward, and we have number 1, which is put in. In this case, we talked about how it was referring to money, and it is to pump. Number 2, use a machine to make holes, and in this case, it is to drill. Number 3, capture and make use of, it means to harness. And number 6, destroy, which is to ruin. Now in this exercise, you had to create 5 sentences using 1 verb, 1 noun, and 1 adjective from the vocabulary. So remember that you could repeat either one of these and in some of your sentences, but preferably not too many. So let's look at the first one. We had the example that we gave last class. It's geothermal heat will be a viable way to generate energy in the future. Another example would be, I directly tackle the use of non-renewable resources because I sell wind turbines that have huge blades. Okay. The next one, I was paying such a high interest to the bank that it ruined the initial dream that I had of buying a house. So remember that these 5 sentences have to be written in your FCE notebook as evidence of your work. Guys, we have our last exercise for today before we move on to checking the answers for reading part 2. So we have fill in the blanks of the text with a list of vocabulary words. You have a list of words on your right side in the slide. So let's begin reading. We said, last week my dad and I installed a solar panel so we could harness enough electrical energy for our house to function. We had to drill several holes on the rooftop, and it took us almost a whole day to set up. Some people think that this technology is not cost-effective because the initial cost is too high. However, we did not regret buying it because even though we had to take out a loan and pay it off in 6 months with a high interest rate, in the long term we have found that it has actually saved us a lot of money, and most importantly, it is a way of helping the planet. Okay guys, now we're going to go over the correct answers for reading part 2. So for number 9, the correct answer is letter C. Non-renewable fuels are limited, so the more we use now, the less we have for the future, and it is only a matter of time before none of these resources remain. Number 10, the correct answer is letter G. So it's governments are pumping resources. In this case, it's putting in money, remember, or resources into the research and production of alternative energy technologies and have made significant progress in recent years. Number 11, the correct answer is letter D. And it says the main advantage then is in fact that this form of energy does not produce harmful or damaging gases or use up natural resources. Number 12 is letter F. However, the solar panels and cells required to convert this into energy are relatively expensive to buy and install, meaning many people are unable to afford the initial costs that this represents. Number 13, letter A. Some people feel that the placement of these unattractive pieces of equipment totally ruins the appearance of an area. This is talking about wind energy. Number 14, letter H. After all, nobody wants their peace and quiet interrupted by the sound of the gigantic blades turning. Also talking about wind energy. Number 15, letter E. Water pumped down to this depth comes back up as stream, which drives the turbines to produce electricity. So in this case, pumped is used in a different way as in the previous example in letter G, which is pumping resources. In letter G is putting in money, and for letter E, water pumped. This is a phrasal verb which is pumped down, and it is different because it just means to move a liquid downward. Thanks for paying attention, guys. I'll see you next class.
Okay, so let's continue with today's activities from our student book. Today, we're going to be talking about earthquakes and tsunamis. So now, have you ever experienced an earthquake? Remember that an earthquake is when the plates crash against each other, and that's why we feel like the earth is moving, right? I think in Mexico we have had different strong and big earthquakes which have caused big disaster, right? Have you ever been in a place in which there has been an earthquake? Maybe if you have gone to Mexico City, maybe in some places in San Luis, people have also felt it, but not as strong or not as big as in Mexico City, right? Now, we're also going to be talking about tsunamis today, okay? I think here in Mexico we have never had a tsunami before, which is something that we can feel happy for and blessed, let's say, because they're extremely dangerous and they cause a huge disaster, right? Remember, they're also like earthquakes, but in the ocean, and that's why we have a big amount of water coming out of the ocean or overpassing the limits, right? There have been also movies about this, right? Okay, so today we're going to be talking about earthquakes and tsunamis, but also about photographs, right? So as you can see, there has been people that take photos of these disasters. So please open up your student book on page 112. Now, on 112, today we're going to be watching a TED Talk. It's called Retouching or Touching Lives Through Photos. We take photos constantly. A photo is a reminder of someone or something, a place, a relationship, or a loved one. Okay, that is called by Becci Manson. So, guys, what do you think? Do you think photos remind us of people, of places, of relationships, or someone that we love? They certainly do, right? So how would you feel if you were to lose any of those photos? Probably extremely sad, right? Devastated. And that happens every time we lose our phones, right? We're like, oh, but what I wanted to, or what I had in that phone, or what made that phone special were the photos, not the phone, but the photos we had in it, right? So imagine losing all your photos in a tsunami or in an earthquake. That will be upsetting, right? So let's go ahead and watch this. Let's read about Becci Manson and to get ready to watch the TED Talk. Okay, great.
Becci Manson is a professional photo retoucher, able to improve images by adding details or removing flaws. But there is more to retouching than just selling magazines. In 2011, she decided to go to Japan and volunteer as part of the cleanup operation in towns that had been devastated by the tsunami. She worked in the evacuation center, where she ended up scanning and repairing damaged photographs that people brought to her. Becci Manson's idea worth spreading is that photographs hold our memories and our histories, connecting us to each other and to the past.
Okay, now that we've watched this first part, today we're going to go over authentic listening skills. We're going to be talking about intonation and completing a point. It says that we often use a rising intonation to show we're going to add an idea and a falling intonation to show that our point is complete. This pattern is common in lists and contrasts. Okay, so every time we speak and we have something else to add, our tone of voice goes up. But when we're about to conclude an idea, our voice or tone of voice goes down. Okay? For example, it says here, look at the authentic listening box, then listen to Becci and practice saying the extract yourself. So let's go over this first. It says, a photo is a reminder of someone or something, a place, or a relationship, a loved one. There are memory keepers and our histories, the last thing we would grab and the first thing you'd go back to look for. Okay, so let's go over what she says and let's come back to this. Okay.
The photo is a reminder of someone or something, a place, a relationship, a loved one. There are memory keepers in our histories, the last thing we would grab and the first thing you'd go back to look for.
Now that we've listened to it, let's go ahead and complete this together. Remember, we have to decide where a rising intonation is used and where a falling intonation can be used. So we have number one, we make skinny models skinnier, perfect skin more perfect, and the impossible possible. So, first of all, we say we make skinny models skinnier. We're continuing, we're going to continue an idea, right? Perfect skin more perfect, that's also continuing the idea, and the impossible possible. Now, for that goes down, right? The intonation goes down. Now, number two, we pull debris from canals and ditches. We clean schools. We demudded and gutted homes. Okay, so we pull debris from canals. It goes up, and ditches goes down because we're finishing the idea. We clean schools. It goes down, and we demudded and gutted homes. So we demudded, which means to remove the mud, and gutted homes. And gutted homes, right? Because it continues, but then it ends the idea. Okay, so that's how intonation works a little, guys. And I'm pretty sure we all know how to use this, right? Because even in our first language, we also do this. When we are going to continue an idea, our intonation increases because we know it's going to continue. But when it's going to end, it goes a little bit down, right? Great. Okay, so now for exercise number 3, it says to work in groups and tell each other about and show each other, if you can, photos that remind you of special people, places, or times in your life. This would be a perfect activity in the classroom to discuss with people. So hopefully, once we come back to our school, we can work this. Okay, we can work on this. So we'll discuss an image that reminds you of something special, of a special person, a special place, or something special that happened to you in your life. Okay. Now, for exercise number 4, it says to watch part 1 of the talk. Find an example of where Becky says. So first of all, it says makes a joke about her profession. 2, defends her profession. 3, gives an example of an unpleasant job she did. 4, had an initial moment of realization. 5, felt a sense of pride. 6, had a positive reaction from her contacts. So, let's watch this first part of the TED Talk, and once we finish watching it, please complete this. If you are able to complete it while watching, it will be perfect. Okay? Go.
before March 2011, I was a photographic retoucher based in New York City. We're pale, grey creatures. We hide in dark, windowless rooms and generally avoid sunlight. We make skinny models skinnier, perfect skin more perfect, and the impossible possible. And we get criticised in the press all the time. But some of us are actually talented artists with years of experience and a real appreciation for images and photography. On March 11th, 2011, I watched from home, as the rest of the world did, as the tragic events unfolded in Japan. Soon after, an organisation I volunteer with, All Hands Volunteers, were on the ground within days, working as part of the response efforts. I, along with hundreds of other volunteers, knew we couldn't just sit at home, so I decided to join them for 3 weeks. On May the 13th, I made my way to the town of Ofanato. It's a small fishing town in Iwate Prefecture. About 50,000 people, one of the first that was hit by the wave. The waters here have been recorded at reaching over 24 metres in height and travelled over 2 miles inland. As you can imagine, the town had been devastated. We pulled debris from canals and ditches. We cleaned schools. We demudded and gutted homes ready for renovation and rehabilitation. We cleared tons and tons of stinking, rotting fish carcasses from the local fish processing plant. We got dirty, and we loved it. For weeks, all the volunteers and locals alike had been finding similar things. They've been finding photos and photo albums and cameras and SD cards. Everyone was doing the same. They were collecting them up and handing them into various places around the different towns for safekeeping. Now, it wasn't until this point that I realised that these photos were such a huge part of the personal loss these people had felt. As they had run from the wave and for their lives, absolutely everything they had, everything had to be left behind. At the end of my first week there, I found myself helping out in an evacuation centre in the town. I was helping clean the onsen, the communal onsen, the huge giant bathtubs. This happened to also be a place in the town where the evacuation centre was collecting the photos. This is where people were handing them in. And I was honoured that day that they actually trusted me to help them start hand cleaning them. Now, it was emotional and it was inspiring. And I've always heard about thinking outside the box. But it wasn't until I'd actually gotten outside of my box that something happened. As I looked through the photos, there were some were over 100 years old, some still in the envelope from the processing lab. I couldn't help but think as a retoucher that I could fix that tear and mend that scratch, and I knew hundreds of people who could do the same. So that evening, I just reached out on Facebook and asked a few of them, and by morning, the response had been so overwhelming and so positive, I knew we had to give it a go. So we started retouching photos.
Okay, so let's check number 4 together. Number 1, find an example where Becky makes a joke about her profession. So she says that they're pale and that they're great creatures, right? That's when she makes a joke about herself. Now, when does she defend her profession? It says we get criticized in the press all the time, but some of us are actually talented. Number 3, gives an example of an unpleasant job she did. So she mentions that she cleared tons of rotting fish, right? Number 4, had an initial moment of realization. So that would be, I realized that these photos were such a huge part of the personal loss these people had felt. Number 5, felt a sense of pride. So I couldn't help but think, as a retoucher, that I could fix that tear and mend that scratch. Right? And number 6, had a positive reaction from her context. By morning, the response had been so overwhelming and so positive. So she mentions that she posted something on Facebook and linked that day, and the other day she had quite a few responses, right? Now, for number 5, it says to work in pairs and tell each other about things you've lost or broken and wish you still had. So, what is something that you lost, that you broke, and you wish that never happened? Think about that, guys. And things you're good at repairing. So, are you good at repairing something? What is it? Maybe your phone, maybe a camera. I don't know. There's different things that we can repair quite easy, right? Good. Now let's move on to exercise number 6, and it says watch part 2 of the talk and answer if these statements are true, false, or not stated. So let's go ahead and read them together. Number 1 says the little girl in the first photo didn't survive the tsunami. 2. Before long, Becky and her team were scanning photos every other day. 3. Some of the people who brought photos were unfamiliar with the technology Becky was using. 4. The kimono in the photo took months to retouch. 5. Photos would only get retouched once their owners had come forward. 6. The lady who brought the family portraits already had extra copies. 7. Both of the lady's children were caught in the waves when the tsunami reached land. 8. All of the photos Becky and her team retouched were returned to their owners. And number 9. Becky and her team needed new printers. Okay, so let's go ahead and watch part 2 of the talk. And remember, guys, you're going to answer if each statement is stated, not true or false, okay? Not stated, true or false.
This was the very first. Not terribly damaged, but where the water had caused that discoloration on the girl's face had to be repaired with such accuracy and delicacy. Otherwise, that little girl isn't going to look like that little girl anymore, and surely that's as tragic as having the photo damaged. Over time, more photos came in, thankfully, and more retouches were needed, and so I reached out again on Facebook and LinkedIn, and within 5 days, 80 people wanted to help from 12 different countries. Within 2 weeks, I had 150 people wanting to join in. Within Japan, by July, we'd branched out to the neighboring town of Rikisen Takeda, further north to a town called Yamada. Once a week, we would set up our scanning equipment in the temporary photo libraries that had been set up, where people were reclaiming their photos. The older ladies sometimes hadn't seen a scanner before, but within 10 minutes of them finding their lost photo, they could give it to us, have it scanned, uploaded to a cloud server. It'd be downloaded by a gaijin, a stranger, somewhere on the other side of the globe, and it'd start being fixed. The time it took, however, to get it back is a completely different story, and it depended obviously on the damage involved. It could take an hour, it could take weeks, it could take months. The kimono in this shot pretty much had to be hand-drawn or pieced together, picking out the remaining parts of color and detail that the water hadn't damaged. It was very time-consuming. Now, all these photos have been damaged by water, submerged in salt water, covered in bacteria, in sewage, sometimes even oil, all of which over time is going to continue to damage them. So hand cleaning them was a huge part of the project. We couldn't retouch the photo unless it was cleaned, dry, and reclaimed. And we were lucky with our hand cleaning. We had an amazing local woman who guided us. It's very easy to do more damage to those damaged photos. As my team leader Win once said, it's like doing a tattoo on someone. You don't get a chance to mess it up. The lady who brought us these photos was lucky as far as the photos go. She had started hand cleaning them herself and stopped when she realized she was doing more damage. She also had duplicates. Areas like her husband and her face which otherwise would have been completely impossible to fix. We could just put them together in one good photo and remake a whole photo. When she collected the photos from us, she shared a bit of her story with us. Her photos were found by her husband's colleagues at the local fire department in the debris, a long way from where the home had once stood, and they'd recognised him. The day of the tsunami, he'd actually been in charge of making sure the tsunami gates were closed. He had to go towards the water as the siren sounded. Her two little boys, not so little anymore, but her two boys were both at schools, separate schools. One of them got caught up in the water. It took her a week to find them all again and find out that they'd all survived. The day I gave her the photos also happened to be her youngest son's 14th birthday. For her, despite all of this, those photos were the perfect gift back to him. Something he could look at again, something he remembered from before that wasn't still scarred from that day in March when absolutely everything else in his life had changed or been destroyed. After 6 months in Japan, 1,100 volunteers had passed through all hands, hundreds of whom had helped us hang clean over 135,000 photographs. A large majority of which did actually find their home again, importantly. Over 500 volunteers around the globe helped us get 90 families, hundreds of photographs back, fully restored and retouched. During this time, we hadn't really spent more than about $1,000 in equipment and materials, most of which was printer inks.
Okay, so now that we watched it, let's go ahead and answer. Number 1 says, the little girl in the first photo didn't survive the tsunami. That is not stated, right? It doesn't mention that. Number 2, before long, Becky and her team were scanning photos every other day. That is false, right? They worked on it every day. 3, some of the people who brought photos were unfamiliar with technology Becky was using. That is true, right? Number 4, the kimono in the photo took months to retouch. That is not stated. Number 5, photos would only get retouched once their owners had come forward. So that is true, right? Number 6, the lady who brought the family portraits already had extra copies. That was true as well. Both of the lady's children were caught in the waves when the tsunami reached land. That is false. The waves didn't reach them, right? Number 8, all of the photos Becky and her team retouched were returned to their owners. That is false. And Becky and her team needed new printers. That is false, right? They had enough equipment. They even had money to buy it. It mentions that they spent some dollars on it, right? Good. So let's move on to number 7, which is my perspective. And it says work in pairs, and these discuss the questions. Number 1, why do you think the response to Becky's request for help on social media was so high? So probably there were a lot of retouchers that wanted to help, right? That wanted to bring joy to these people. Number 2, what other causes do you think might receive a high response on social media and why? So even in natural disasters, people post ideas or things that you can send to people who suffered in the natural disaster, and there's a high response on that, right? What happened in the earthquake in Mexico City? People from all over the country collected things to send to them, right? Water, tuna, soups, all that, right? So that can also get a high response. Good. Now, we're going to watch part 3 of the talk, and which sentence you think is the best summary of the main point Becky makes. So we have 4 options. A, everyone loves taking photos. B, photographs are the most important things most people own? C. Both survivors and volunteers involved in the project benefited in a major way. And D. Without photos, we wouldn't be able to remember our past that well. Okay, so let's watch and answer.
We take photos constantly. A photo is a reminder of someone or something, a place, a relationship, a loved one. They're our memory keepers and our histories. The last thing we would grab and the first thing you'd go back to look for. That's all this project was about restoring those little bits of humanity, giving someone that connection back. When a photo like this can be returned to someone like this, it makes a huge difference in the lives of the person receiving it. The project's also made a big difference in the lives of the retouchers. For some of them, giving them a connection to something bigger, giving something back, using their talents on something other than skinny models and perfect skin. I would like to conclude by reading an email I got from one of them, Cindy, the day I finally got back from Japan after 6 months. As I worked, I couldn't help but think about the individuals and the stories represented in the images. One in particular, a photo of women of all ages, from grandmother to little girl gathered around a baby, struck a chord because a similar photo from my family, my grandmother, mother, myself and newborn daughter, hangs on our wall. Across the globe, throughout the ages, our basic needs are just the same, aren't they? Thank you.
Okay, so let's check. Let's think of which is the best summary. We have A, everyone loves taking photos. That is not so important, right? It doesn't mention that specifically. Photographs are the most important things most people own. Not quite. Both survivors and volunteers involved in the project benefit in a major way. She talks about that, right? She mentions that they both received some type of benefit from it. D, without photos, we wouldn't be able to remember our past that well. It's not mentioned. So the correct answer would be letter C, right? Great. Now moving on to exercise number 9, it says to work in pairs. Which of these statements do you think are lessons from the talk? Do you agree with them? So let's go ahead and answer this together. I would like for you guys to take notes in your notebook about this and probably at the same time as you listen to me, think about your answers. So, for example, number 1 says, our differences matter, but our common humanity matters more. I absolutely agree with this, right? No matter what the problem is, if we know someone that needs help, we need to help them, right? Number 2, in times of crisis, individuals can make a difference in ways that governments cannot. It's really hard. I also agree with that. It's also really difficult for the government to reach all the society immediately or as fast as they can. But if we can do something to help someone that is close to us and that the government hasn't reached, we can make a difference for them, right? Number 3, we don't think enough about the physiological and emotional side of recovery after disasters. I think that is true. We absolutely, we understand that they're suffering, but we mainly think that they suffer because they lost their homes, because they lost their belongings. But we don't think about how they're emotionally. So I would agree with number 3 as well. I don't know what you think. Number 4, it's important to feel that the work you do has a positive impact on society. I would agree with this because I think we all need to do something about it. So if we can see that what we're doing has a positive impact on someone, we'll continue doing it, right? That's what I think. Number 5, some people volunteer because they feel guilty about how lucky they've been. I would disagree with this one. I don't think people feel guilty. Maybe they feel thankful of what they have, and they do it because they want to help others. To thank in any way to someone or to something, how blessed they have been. Number 6, countries shouldn't be expected to deal with large-scale disasters on their own. I don't know. I would disagree with this one a little and agree because I think, well, the country has to do something for its people, but sometimes a disaster can be gigantic, so it's kind of difficult for just the country to do something. It needs society and maybe also support from other countries as well. That's what I think of it. Now, what I want you to do, guys, is to think about this, reflect on it, think about yours about it too, discuss it if you can with someone else, and think about it. Okay, just don't listen to me. Also, create your point of view. Now, for number 10, it says vocabulary and context. We're going to watch a TED Talk here, and please choose the correct meaning of the words. Okay, so let's watch and listen.
I watched from home amidst the rest of the world did as the tragic events unfolded in Japan. And soon after, an organisation I volunteer with, all hands volunteers, were on the ground. I knew it was going to go. So we started retouching photos. Had to go towards the victim as the sirens sounded. Over 500 volunteers around the globe helped us get 90 families, hundreds of
Okay, guys, to finish up with today's activities, it says to work in pairs and tell each other about a film or a book, a film, a book, a photo, or a piece of art that struck a chord with you. Remember, we just watched and heard what to strike a chord on you means, okay? So think about it. 3 places around the globe you'd like to visit, and a time you remember watching major news story unfold. We also went over this meaning, okay? So guys, what I want you to do is in your notebooks, make a chart like the one it's here that's here on the video, and you're going to answer it on your notebook, okay? Make a chart, a small chart, and think about the places you would like to visit, a film, a book, a photo, or a piece of art that struck a chord on you, and a time you remember watching a major news story unfold. And we're going to check this once we come back to school. Okay? Great. Now, to finish up, today's homework, guys, is workbook page 106. On workbook page 106, we have 4 exercises. They're all regarding the TED Talk that we watched today. So if necessary, go back to the TED Talk, watch it again, and so you can answer exercises 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay? Great. Guys, this is the end of the class, okay? Hopefully you guys have understood everything, have completed everything correctly. And guys, please remember to stay home, stay safe, and complete all your assignments. Okay, remember to do your homework. We're going to check the next class. Stay safe. Goodbye.